Hello everyone. So this video is going to be a little bit different. Usually I'd write an article about something like this, but I felt that the subject matter surrounding it deserved the camera being turned on, so that way I could address it a little more head on, a little more personally. For those of you who don't know, today marks the 1 year anniversary of the passing of Chester Bennington. He took his own life on July 20th of last year, which was also the birthday of one of his best friends, Chris Cornell. Um, so it's pretty apparent that that was the reason that he took his own life. And I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to talk about the band Linkin Park in general, what they mean to me as not only a musician but a music listener, just somebody who appreciates music. And I wanted to talk about also the reason that Chester passed and what it means, not just for the music world, but for everybody else in general, and what we can do to address it and keep things like his death from happening again. So when I first found out that Chester passed, I was at work. I had gone about my day. I I think I did some laundry. I talked to my girlfriend at the time. I had a normal day, and then I went to work. And my boss at that site told me, and he and I are both very into music. We like a lot of the same stuff. He likes a little bit of like harder metal than I do, but we, other than that, there's a lot of overlap in the type of stuff that we listen to. And so we're always talking about music, and he was the one that told me that Chester passed. And at first, I didn't believe him. I thought maybe he meant a different Chester. I thought maybe he meant the lead singer of a different band. I thought maybe I misheard him, so I was in a little bit of denial. And the reason that I was in a little bit of denial is because Linkin Park has been and probably always will be one of my favorite bands. I first discovered them when I was 12 or 13, when Hybrid Theory first came out. I think my sister and I heard Crawling or In the End or one of those songs, probably In the End, on the radio, and we decided that we would look them up. And it has to have been In the End, because I think my mom heard it and she's like, "Hey, this isn't so bad," and she let us buy the CD. And usually she wouldn't have let us buy that type of music. So, Linkin Park was almost 100% responsible for me getting into harder music. Up until that point, I liked rock, but it was mostly what my parents listened to. My dad likes classic rock. He likes the Rolling Stones are one of his favorite bands. Pink Floyd is one of his favorite bands. So that's sort of classic rock is was sort of my basis. And then my mom likes the sort of the softer side of rock, so like the singer-songwriter stuff like James Taylor and Billy Joel and Elton John and all those. And then also I liked R&B and pop and stuff like that, because of both of my parents. They listened to that. My sister and my older cousins, they really liked pop music, Britney Spears and NSYNC and all those. So I already had a fairly broad upbringing for music, but Linkin Park really sort of solidified my ability to be as eclectic as I am, because up until that time, except for a little bit of Eminem and discovering through him a little bit of Dr. Dre and Nelly and Tupac and Biggie, who at that point were already a few years gone, unfortunately. I already knew a little bit about rap, but I was sort of reluctant toward it because of views of both of my parents and the stigma of a lot of the other adults who were around me at the time. But then I heard Linkin Park, and I was able to really listen to Mike Shinoda's rapping and what he was able to do with lyrics and flow and stuff like that. And so Linkin Park was pretty much half responsible for my appreciation of rap. they were almost 100% responsible for my appreciation of metal and harder rock and sort of alternative metal and stuff like that. Before them, I mean, I knew about Metallica. I liked some of their stuff. You know, and you know, forgive me, I wasn't, you know, the adult you see now. I wasn't even a teenager yet. I was like 12 or 13 years old. So, you know, I had heard a little bit of Metallica, a little bit of, you know, Iron Maiden and sort of the older metal bands. And, you know, I liked it, but I was always sort of I always shied away from it a little bit, mostly because of my mom, who, you know, didn't like that kind of music. And, you know, the music that I had already discovered on my own was maybe a little bit harder than like what my mom listened to. It was, you know, sort of like the post-grunge stuff of the late 90s. You know, so it was maybe not harder, but a little edgier. It was like Bare Naked Ladies, Blues Traveler, Stone Temple Pilots, a little bit of Alice in Chains, which my mom really didn't like. And then my favorite band was Matchbox 20. And so that was sort of the stuff that I had already discovered on my own. But Linkin Park really sort of expanded that. And I started listening to more grunge and more metal and more, you know, of the harder, edgier, harsher type of music. And so they were really sort of responsible for me being as eclectic as I am at you know, that point in my life and even now. So when Chester passed, it was like I lost a part of why I'm so interested in music, why I listen to what I listen to. And so, you know, it really shook me and it really hit me hard. And I really want to address what happened and why it happened and how we can sort of avoid it in the future, not just for people like Chester, but for people that we know, people that we love, friends and family. And depression is hard. It's really... I don't have depression. I don't have clinical depression, at least, not anymore. And when I say not anymore, I mean I have anxiety. There are things that I worry about that I'm aware sort of go beyond just everyday worrying. I obsess over things that I shouldn't obsess over. I look at every possible scenario and I pick the worst one sometimes and I freak myself out. And that's anxiety. But it never cripples me. It never gets to the point where I don't want to get up or I want to go back to sleep all day, or I don't want to eat, or I don't want to do anything. And I have been in that spot before, but the reason that I was in that spot is because from when I was 7 or 8 until I was 17 or 18, I took Ritalin to address ADHD. And it definitely did help me focus. It definitely calmed me down. So it amplified, you know, good aspects of my psyche, but it also amplified the anxiety. And that, coupled with the fact that I don't want to get too much into it, but the fact that my home life wasn't the greatest, you know, I was a child of divorce and all that jazz. I had a sick mom. You know, that sort of gave me depression. So it was a combination of situational depression and then the anxiety being amplified by the medication I was taking. But my doctor and I were able to address it. He took me off of the Ritalin, and you know, it took a little while, but my brain just kind of rewired itself, and I definitely still struggle with anxiety, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. And so I consider myself very fortunate because I can say that I know what it's like to have depression, but then I also know what it's like to come out of it almost entirely. And as I said, I feel very fortunate. I feel very lucky, and I know that a lot of people aren't that lucky. I know that a lot of people struggle with depression every day. That there are days where they don't want to get up, that there are days where they don't want to do anything. They don't want to eat. They don't want to talk to anybody. And when it gets really bad, they don't want to be anything anymore. And I've witnessed that firsthand. I don't want to get into names. I don't even want to get into when it happened, but I had a friend who had enough one day. And he's gone now. And there aren't a lot of things that can prepare you for that. And he's been gone for quite a long time, but it's still, even now when I think about it, it hurts. You know, I wonder where he'd be right now. I wonder what he'd be doing. I wonder what job he would have. I wonder if he would have met somebody and had a family. And I still have friends who suffer with depression and with suicidal ideation. And it terrifies me that I'm going to wonder these things about one of them one day. And I shouldn't have to wonder those things. And I shouldn't have to worry about them. And I'm not trying to make it about me. What I'm saying is that the people who suffer with depression and the people around them that love them, the friends and the family that love them, aren't able to talk about this kind of thing enough. And the passing of Chester Bennington, as tragic as it was, it really made that apparent. That people who suffer with depression and those around them are sort of almost encouraged to hide it, to not talk about it, to not address it. And that needs to change. And again, with Chester's passing, it's begun to change, but it needs to change more rapidly. You know, not that long ago, I had a friend who lost a former classmate to depression. And that's what it is. You know, these people aren't committing suicide. You commit a crime. You commit something that is wrong. And I'm not saying that suicide is right. I'm just saying that it's not. We shouldn't condemn people who have depression, because that's part of the reason that they condemn themselves, and that, to put it bluntly, they put themselves to death because they feel condemned. Depression is just like any other illness. Mental illness is just like any other illness. You know, we address cancer and AIDS and I don't know, hepatitis and diabetes and all these other illnesses. We address them, and we have movements for them. We have ribbons, and we have parades, and we have outreach, and we have, you know, all these events and newsletters and all these things for physical illness. And that's great. You know, I had an uncle who passed away about 10 years ago due to lymphoma. And while he passed away, and it's unfortunate, and that still hits me every day, I know that we did everything that we could, that we addressed it, that we tried to fix it, that, you know, we made him as comfortable as possible when we knew that we couldn't fix it. And that's great. it sucks that he's gone, but at least I know that we tried as hard as we could to keep him around. But with mental illness, that isn't really what we do. We sweep it under the rug. We tell people they'll be fine. We, make excuses, and we don't allow mental illness to be viewed the same way as physical illness. And that's not okay. If when we hear the words mental illness, we think about somebody that's crazy, that's psychotic, that's seeing things or hearing things, or seeing and hearing things. And yes, that is, some mental illness is like that, and that also needs to be addressed. Somebody who's crazy, who's actually insane, does also need help. But that's not what this is about. That's a different subject entirely. But people who have depression, who have anxiety like me, who have PTSD, who have bipolar disorder, these are disorders, borderline personality disorder, stuff like that. These are disorders and illnesses that we don't talk about enough. And I'm going to try to find some links to post with this. Maybe not as soon as I put the video up, but I'll edit it accordingly, so that way I can post some links. But Chester Bennington's wife, Talinda, I know that Mike Shinoda, who, by the way, part of the reason I'm doing this video is because I did a review of his album Post Traumatic, which addresses the passing of Chester, and that sort of inspired me to do this. I know that he's spoken out about this type of thing. Like I said, I'll try to find some links. So we really need to support that type of thing. We need to support the movements that Chester Bennington's friends and family have tried to establish. We need to support other movements. If you are suffering from depression, especially if you have suicidal ideation, talk to somebody you trust, somebody you love. Hell, call a helpline. There are helplines for it. There's websites. There's all kinds of things. We just don't make them as well known as we do for things involving physical illness. I'm gonna post this on my Facebook page, on my music page. I might post it on my personal Facebook. I might also post it on my YouTube channel, which that's something else I want to get into quickly. I had a YouTube channel, and I might have even filmed a video for editing that day that Chester passed, and I never posted the video. I never posted any other videos. It's been a year since I posted anything on that channel, and the passing of Chester was part of the reason for it. I just wasn't feeling very creative for a while, and then a while became a year. But at the same time, I've been thinking about it a lot. And when the EP for Post Traumatic, Mike Shinoda's album, came out, that inspired me to get into this songwriting thing. And making the Facebook page, probably restarting the YouTube channel at some point, drawing and writing poetry. And so while Chester Bennington's passing may have crippled my creative mind for a little while, it also sort of restarted it, and it was responsible for restarting it. So I want to thank Chester in a weird way, and I want to thank Mike, and I want to thank all the guys in Linkin Park for inspiring me, and for really getting me into different types of music, I am thankful of them. I just wish that, Chester could be around for longer. And I hope that we can keep other people around for longer. I want to leave you with something involving the creative process. It's a poem. Usually I won't read poems in video form. Usually I'm just going to post them on the page. But I felt that leaving you with it would probably be a good way to end the video. I'm sorry this video is so long. I'm probably not going to edit it at all. I just wanted to sort of get all of this out. I'm sorry if this is kind of hard to watch, but it is definitely something that needs to be addressed. Again, I'm going to post some links. So let me get my phone and bring up the poem, and I'm going to read it real quick. And other than that, take care. Again, talk to somebody if you need to. I'll see you later. Let me read this. The tears came before I even knew if it was appropriate to cry for you. Yeah, I'm aware that we never even met, but that don't mean I'm not full of regret. I never saw you in a show. Now I never will. I'll never even know if that void can be filled. These tears I'm crying, they ain't for you. They're for every single person that you never even knew. They're for the wife and kids who saw you do what you did. They're for the fans and friends who knew in the end that you fucking mattered more than you know. And what we wouldn't give for one more show.